The morning sun cast long shadows across the Afghan mountainside as Staff Sergeant Carlos Martinez adjusted his position behind the Barrett M8201. The weight of the .50 caliber rifle felt familiar against his shoulder, a deadly extension of his will honed through 8 years of military service and countless confirmed kills. Beside him, Corporal Danny Hayes worked methodically through his spotting routine, rangefinder in one hand, wind meter in the other. "Wind's picking up from the northwest," Hayes murmured, his voice barely audible even at close range. "Gusting between 15 and 20. Temperatures climbing, fast gonna create thermals in about an hour." Martinez nodded, keeping his eye pressed to the Leupold scope. The terrorist compound sprawled below them like a concrete cancer against the desert floor. Exactly 847 meters, according to Hayes' laser rangefinder. Intelligence had been tracking Halil Nazir for 3 months, a bomb maker, responsible for 17 coalition deaths and countless civilian casualties. Today, finally, they had him cornered. "Target building is the 2-story structure, northeast corner," Martinez whispered, adjusting his scope's parallax. "Intel says he'll show between 1200 and 1215 hours for a supply transfer." Hayes consulted his tablet, running ballistic calculations. "At this range, with current wind conditions, you're looking at a 12-inch holdover and about 8 inches left windage. Doable, but tight." Martinez had made harder shots. The 750-grain Hornady AMAX rounds in his magazine could punch through engine blocks at this distance. A human target, even one as paranoid as Nazir, wouldn't pose much challenge. He'd earned his reputation as one of the Army's top marksmen through precision, patience, and an almost supernatural ability to read. Environmental conditions. The scope's crosshairs settled on the compound's main entrance. Martinez controlled his breathing, letting his heart rate slow to the methodical rhythm that preceded every successful engagement. In the zone, his instructors had called it, that place where time seemed to stretch, where wind patterns became visible, where the rifle became an extension of his nervous system. That's when his world exploded. The Leupold scope disintegrated in a shower of glass and twisted metal. The impact drove the rifle stock back into Martinez's shoulder with enough force to knock him sideways. Fragments of the scope's housing peppered his face, drawing thin lines of blood across his cheek. For a split second, his mind couldn't process what had happened. "Contact!" Hayes screamed, grabbing Martinez by the drag handle on his plate carrier and yanking him away from their position. "Sniper! Sniper!" Martinez rolled behind a boulder, his hands instinctively checking for wounds while his brain struggled to catch up. The Barrett lay where he'd dropped it, the scope mount twisted into an abstract sculpture of destroyed optics. A perfectly round hole had been punched through the center of the scope's main tube. Not a lucky shot, not a ricochet. Someone had deliberately targeted the exact center of his optics from an unknown position. Where the hell did that come from? Martinez gasped, adrenaline flooding his system. His ears rang from the impact, but he'd heard no gunshot, no supersonic crack of a passing bullet. The shot had arrived in complete silence. Hayes was already scanning the surrounding terrain through his spotting scope, his movements sharp and professional despite the shock. No muzzle flash, no sound signature. Had to be suppressed, but even then, he paused, adjusting the scope's magnification. "Sarge, the angle's all wrong. That shot came from behind us, maybe above us. But there's nothing there. I checked that sector twice during our approach." Martinez examined the destroyed scope more carefully. The bullet had struck dead center, punching through the objective lens, the internal mechanisms, and the ocular lens in a perfectly straight line. The precision required for such a shot was staggering, not just hitting a target the size of a dinner plate at unknown range, but hitting the exact center of that target. This wasn't a kill shot, Martinez realized. his voice tight with a mixture of professional admiration and growing dread. Someone just announced their presence. Hayes continued his systematic scan of the surrounding ridgelines. The terrain was typical Afghan highlands, rocky outcroppings, sparse vegetation, countless hiding spots for someone with the right training. But their position had been chosen specifically for its commanding view and defensive advantages. Anyone attempting to engage them would have to expose themselves across open ground or make an impossibly long shot from the distant peaks. Movement, Hayes whispered suddenly. Ridgeline, bearing 270, range. He adjusted the spotting scope's focus. Jesus Christ, Sarge. 1,200 meters, maybe more. Martinez grabbed his backup optics, a pair of military-grade binoculars, and followed Hayes' direction. At first, he saw nothing but rock and shadow. Then, like a mirage resolving into reality, he spotted the figure. Desert camouflage, perfectly positioned to blend with the natural terrain. The person was so still they might have been carved from the mountain itself. "Can you make out any details?" Martinez asked, though he already knew the answer. At that range, even with quality optics, identifying specific features would be nearly impossible. Negative. But the positioning is professional textbook sniper hide. Whoever that is knows what they're doing. Hayes paused, running quick calculations in his head. Sarge, the math doesn't work. From that position, accounting for the angle, the wind, the distance, that shot should have been impossible. Martinez studied the distant figure through his binoculars. Something about the shooter's posture suggested patience, control, and a level of skill that made his own considerable abilities seem amateur by comparison. The figure hadn't moved since Hayes first spotted them, maintaining the kind of motionless discipline that separated true professionals from weekend warriors. "Try to raise them on the radio," Martinez ordered. "All military frequencies." Hayes cycled through their communication channels, broadcasting on standard NATO frequencies, emergency channels, even the local Afghan National Army networks. Nothing but static and the occasional chatter from distant coalition units. No response, Sarge. Either they're not military, or they're not interested in talking. Martinez felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. In 8 years of combat operations, he'd encountered enemy snipers, friendly fire incidents, and equipment failures. But this felt different, calculated, personal, almost theatrical. Someone had deliberately destroyed his scope with surgical precision, then revealed themselves at an impossible range. It was a demonstration, a message written in the language of ballistics and precision shooting. "What's our mission status?" Martinez asked, though he already knew the answer would complicate everything. Hayes checked his watch. "Target window opens in 3 hours. We're locked in position until 12-15 hours minimum, unless we get abort orders from command." Martinez considered their options. They could call for extraction, report the incident, and let someone else handle Nazir. But that would mean abandoning a mission 3 months in the planning. Letting a high-value target slip away because of one mysterious shooter. Alternatively, they could maintain position, complete their mission, and deal with the unknown sniper as a secondary concern. The decision was made for him when he spotted something that made his blood run cold. Through his binoculars, he watched the distant figure make a subtle adjustment to their rifle position. The movement was minimal, professional, but unmistakably deliberate. The mystery sniper was tracking something, and based on the angle of their weapon, that something was the same terrorist compound Martinez had been assigned to watch. "Hayes," Martinez said quietly, "I think we just found ourselves a competitor." The second shot came without warning. Martinez had just finished mounting his backup scopa, lower magnification Trijicon that would have to suffice until they could requisition proper equipment. He was settling into a new firing position, 40 meters from their original hide, when the rock face beside his head exploded in a shower of granite chips. Down! Hayes screamed, but Martinez was already moving, muscle memory overriding conscious thought. He rolled left, dragging the Barrett with him, as another bullet sparked off the boulder where his head had been milliseconds before. Still no sound. No muzzle flash. Just death arriving in whispers. "She's tracking us," Martinez gasped, pressing himself against the reverse slope of their ridge. His heart hammered against his ribs as the implications sank in. "Every time I set up, she's already there." Hayes' army crawled to a new observation point, keeping the spotting scope low. Negative contact on the 1,200-meter position. "She's moved." His voice carried a note of professional disbelief. "Sarge, that terrain should take 20 minutes to cross, minimum. She's been repositioning every 30 seconds. Martinez checked his chronometer. The shots had come exactly 90 seconds apart, just enough time for him to establish a new position and begin target acquisition. Someone was playing with them, demonstrating a level of field craft that bordered on supernatural. "Range and bearing on the last shot?" Martinez asked, though he suspected the answer would only deepen the mystery. Hayes consulted his tablet, cross-referencing the bullet impact with their known positions. "Based on the angle of impact, bearing 045, range approximately 800 meters. But Sarge, there's nothing there. I've been watching that sector. It's open ground with maybe 6 inches of cover." Martinez raised his head cautiously, scanning the indicated direction through his backup scope. Hayes was right. The terrain offered virtually no concealment. A few scattered rocks, some scrub brush, but nothing that could hide a sniper and their equipment. Yet the shots had definitely originated from that vector. "She's using micro-terrain," Martinez realized. "Depressions, shadows, dead space we can't see from this angle. Moving through gaps in our observation." It was a technique he'd read about in advanced sniper manuals, but never seen executed in real combat. The shooter was essentially invisible, using intimate knowledge of the terrain to move through spaces that appeared empty to distant observers. It required not just exceptional fieldcraft, but an almost supernatural ability to read the landscape and predict enemy sightlines. The radio crackled to life. "Overwatch Team 7, this is a friend." The voice was female, calm, with a slight accent Martinez couldn't place. "You're being sloppy, Sergeant Martinez. Your muzzle discipline needs work." Martinez and Hayes exchanged shocked glances. Their call sign wasn't supposed to be known outside their immediate chain of command. More disturbing, the voice had used Martinez's rank and name information that should have been classified. "Who is this?" Martinez demanded into his radio. "Identify yourself." Soft laughter echoed through the static. "Someone who's been watching you for longer than you'd like to know. Your reputation precedes you, Sergeant. 43 confirmed kills, expert marksman rating, distinguished service in Helmand Province. Impressive for an amateur." Hayes was frantically cycling through frequencies, trying to triangulate the transmission. His equipment showed the signal was coming from multiple directions, simultaneously impossible unless the speaker was using sophisticated relay equipment or "She's moving while she talks," Hayes whispered. Signals bouncing all over the spectrum. Martinez keyed his radio again. "What do you want?" "To give you an education. You think you understand precision shooting? You think your little Barrett makes you dangerous?" The voice carried a note of amusement that made Martinez's skin crawl. "Watch and learn, amateur." At 0934 hours, Martinez spotted movement in his peripheral vision. A playing card fluttered in the wind, pinned to a rock formation 30 meters to their left. The card hadn't been there 5 minutes earlier. He was certain of it. "Hayes, you see that?" "Roger. How the hell did she get that close without us seeing her?" Martinez low-crawled to the card, every nerve ending screaming warnings about exposed positions and kill zones. The card was the Queen of Spades, its black surface stark against the desert stone. A combat knife held it in place, not standard military issue, but a custom piece with a carbon fiber handle and what looked like a titanium blade. Written across the card in what appeared to be dried blood were GPS coordinates: 34, 32, 15N, 69, 1042. Hayes consulted his mapping software. Those coordinates, they're the terrorist compound, dead center of the main building. Martinez studied the knife more carefully. The blade showed signs of recent use, not for combat, but for precision work. Tiny scratches suggested it had been used to adjust equipment, possibly scope mounts or rifle components. The handle bore no manufacturer's marks, no serial numbers, nothing that could be traced. "She's not hunting us," Martinez said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "She's recruiting us." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. She destroys my scope, but doesn't kill me. She demonstrates impossible shots, but never actually engages. Now she's giving us coordinates for our target." Martinez pulled the knife free, noting its perfect balance. "She wants us to watch her work." The radio crackled again. "Very good, Sergeant. You are learning. Your mission is to eliminate Halil Nasir, correct? High-value target, bomb maker, responsible for 17 coalition deaths." Martinez didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. "I've been tracking Nasir for 6 months. He's responsible for more than your intelligence suggests: 43 civilian deaths in Kabul alone, including a school bombing last month. Your government's timeline is inadequate." Hayes was scanning frantically with his spotting scope, trying to locate the source of the transmission. "Still nothing, Sarge. She's a ghost. Here's what's going to happen," the voice continued. "At 11:58 hours and 47 seconds, Nasir will emerge from the main building. He'll be flanked by 4 bodyguards, using standard protective formation. The wind will be gusting northwest at 18 miles per hour. He'll pause at the red door for exactly 2.3 seconds to check his watcha. Nervous habit your intelligence files missed." Martinez felt his blood turn to ice water. The level of detail was staggering, not just tactical intelligence. The behavioral analysis that suggested months of surveillance. "From your position, with your damaged equipment and current wind conditions, the shot is impossible. From mine..." The voice paused, and Martinez could almost hear the smile. "Well, let's just say I don't believe in impossible." At 10:47 hours, Hayes spotted her again. This time she was on a different ridge entirely, nearly 1,500 meters away. The distance should have made radio communication difficult, yet her voice came through crystal clear. "She's not just moving between positions," Hayes said, his voice tight with professional anxiety. "She's moving between mountains. That's not humanly possible in these time frames." Martinez was beginning to suspect they weren't dealing with a single shooter. The coordination, the timing, the impossible positioning, it suggested a team of operators working in perfect synchronization. But the voice was always the same, always calm, always carrying that note of amused superiority. "Sergeant Martinez," the voice said, "in approximately 1 hour, you're going to witness something that will redefine your understanding of precision shooting. I suggest you pay attention. Class is about to begin." The radio went silent, leaving Martinez and Hayes alone with their growing dread and the terrible certainty that they were about to become unwilling students in a masterclass of death. The silence stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Martinez had repositioned 3 more times in the past hour. Each movement met with a precisely placed warning shot that arrived seconds after he settled into position. The mystery sniper wasn't just tracking him, she was predicting his movements, reading his tactical decisions like pages in an open book. It was psychological warfare at its most refined. A demonstration of superiority that left him feeling exposed and amateur. Movement in the compound, Hayes whispered, pressing his eye to the spotting scope. Multiple vehicles approaching from the south. Looks like the supply convoy Intel mentioned. Martinez checked his chronometer. 11:47 hours. Right on schedule. Through his backup scope, he could see dust clouds rising from the desert floor as 3 Toyota pickup trucks wound their way toward the compound's main gate. Halil Nazir would emerge soon to oversee the transfer weapons, explosives, or worse. This was their window. Winds picking up, Hayes reported, consulting his handheld anemometer. Gusting to 22 mph now, shifting between northwest and due north. Thermals are starting to build from the valley floor. Martinez adjusted his scope's windage, running quick calculations in his head. At 847 meters, with current conditions, he'd need to hold nearly 14 inches left and 16 inches high. Doable, but challenging even with proper equipment. With his backup scope and the psychological pressure of being stalked, the shot bordered on impossible. Target building showing activity. Hayes continued his commentary. 2 guards on the roof, 4 more at ground level. They're setting up a perimeter. The radio crackled to life with that now familiar voice, calm as death itself. Nervous, Sergeant Martinez? Your heart rate is elevated. I can see it in your scope movement. Breathing's irregular too. That's not going to help your accuracy. Martinez keyed his radio with barely controlled fury. How the hell are you monitoring my vitals? Soft laughter echoed through the static. Trade secrets. But since you asked so nicely, let me share some intelligence your briefing missed. Nazir isn't just receiving supplies today. He's transferring a completed device. Dirty bomb, radiological dispersal device, whatever you want to call it. Enough cesium-137 to contaminate 6 city blocks. Hayes looked up from his spotting scope, face pale. Sarge, if that's true. It's true, the voice interrupted. Your intelligence apparatus is approximately 72 hours behind reality. The device is already armed, already loaded into one of those trucks. Miss this window, and tomorrow's headlines will be very unpleasant. Martinez felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a lead blanket. A dirty bomb in the wrong hands could kill thousands, create panic across an entire region. But the shot remained impossible. Too much wind, too much distance, too many variables. From your position, Sergeant, success probability is approximately 12%. Acceptable odds for a Hail Mary, unacceptable for preventing mass casualties. The voice paused, and Martinez could hear wind noise in the background, suggesting the speaker was in an exposed position. From my position, however, what's your position? Martinez demanded. Patience. Class is still in session. At 11:52 hours, the compound's main door opened. 2 bodyguards emerged first, scanning the surrounding terrain with professional paranoia. They were good. Martinez could see it in their movement patterns, their positioning, their constant communication. These weren't amateur militants, but trained operators, possibly former military or intelligence. Target's about to show, Hayes whispered. 2 more guards coming out. There. Red door. Just like she said. Halil Nazir stepped into the sunlight, and Martinez felt his finger instinctively move to the trigger guard. The bomb maker was smaller than expected, maybe 5'6", wearing traditional Afghan dress that would complicate shot placement. He moved with the nervous energy of a man who knew he was hunted, never staying still for more than a few seconds. Wind check, Martinez whispered. 18 to 22 mph, gusting northwest. Thermals building fast. You've got maybe a 3-minute window before conditions become completely unpredictable. Martinez settled into his shooting position, controlling his breathing, letting his heart rate slow. The crosshairs found Nasir's center mass, then adjusted for wind and elevation. 14 inches left, 16 inches high. The mathematics of death reduced to simple geometry, but Nasir was using his bodyguards as human shields, never exposing himself for more than a second at a time. The man had survived this long by being paranoid, and that paranoia was paying dividends now. "No clean shot," Martinez muttered. "He's staying behind cover." The radio crackled again. "Observe and learn, amateur." At exactly 11:58 to 30, Nasir began moving toward the red door Hayes had mentioned. His bodyguards maintained their protective formation, but the geometry of the compound forced them into a brief funnel point. For maybe 3 seconds, Nasir would be exposed. "Wind speed 18 mph, gusting northwest," the voice said, her tone shifting to something clinical, professional. "Target will pause at the red door for 2.3 seconds at 11:58 to 47. Range to target from my position, 1,847 meters. Elevation difference, -340 meters. Coriolis effect, negligible. Spin drift, 4.2 inches right." Martinez stared through his scope in disbelief. The level of precision in those calculations was staggering, not just range and wind, but factors most snipers ignored at anything under a mile. Whoever she was operating at a level that transcended normal human capability. Atmospheric pressure, 29.92 inches mercury. Temperature, 87 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity, 23%. Powder temperature, estimated 95 degrees. The voice continued its litany of variables with mechanical precision. Bullet drop, 127.3 inches. Time of flight, 2.1 seconds. Hayes was frantically trying to verify the calculations on his tablet, but the numbers were beyond anything in their standard ballistic software. "Sarge, she's accounting for variables we don't even measure." At 11:58 to 45, Nasir approached the red door. Martinez held his breath, finger on the trigger, waiting for the impossible shot that would never come. The wind was gusting, the range was extreme, and the target was moving unpredictably at exactly 11:58 to 47. Nasir paused at the red door. He checked his watch, just as the voice had predicted. The kill shot arrived like divine intervention. Nasir's head snapped back violently, a pink mist erupting from the exit wound. He dropped instantly, his body crumpling against the red door in a spreading pool of blood. The bodyguards scattered, screaming into their radios, scanning the horizon for threats they would never find. Martinez stared through his scope in absolute shock. He had never fired, never even seen a muzzle flash from the mystery sniper's position. The shot had simply materialized, arriving from nowhere with surgical precision. "Jesus Christ," Hayes whispered, his voice barely audible. "Did you see anything? Any flash? Any movement?" Martinez slowly shook his head, unable to speak. In 8 years of combat, he had never witnessed anything like it. The shot had been mathematically impossible, yet it had happened with clockwork precision. The radio crackled one final time. "Class dismissed, Sergeant. Your real education begins now." The compound below erupted in chaos, but Martinez barely noticed. He was staring at the distant ridgeline where the mystery sniper had been positioned, seeing nothing but empty rock and shadow. Somewhere out there, a ghost had just redefined the possible. The compound below had transformed into a hornet's nest of activity. Vehicles raced between buildings, armed men shouted orders in Pashto and Arabic, and the wail of sirens echoed off the valley walls. But Martinez barely registered the chaos. His mind was locked on a single impossible fact. Someone had just made a shot that defied every law of physics and ballistics he understood. "Sarge," Hayes whispered, his voice tight with disbelief. I need to show you something. Hayes had his tablet open, running advanced ballistic software that calculated trajectory paths in three-dimensional space. The screen showed a complex web of variables wind vectors. Atmospheric conditions, bullet drop compensation, all leading to a single, terrifying conclusion. Based on the target's wound pattern and the angle of impact, I can trace the shot's origin point. Hayes' finger traced a red line across the digital map. It came from grid reference 34, 3147, N. 69-918, E. That's the position where we first spotted her. But Sarge, he paused, double-checking his calculations. The math doesn't just push the boundaries, it shatters them completely. Martinez studied the data, his professional mind struggling to process the implications. What's the total range? 1,847 meters. Downward angle of 19 degrees. With current wind conditions, she had to compensate for. Hayes scrolled through screens of calculations. 37 inches of wind drift, 127 inches of bullet drop, plus Coriolis effect, spin drift, and atmospheric variations. That's not a shot, Martinez said quietly. That's a mathematical miracle. The radio crackled to life one final time, but the voice that emerged was different, warmer. Almost conversational. Sergeant Martinez, Corporal Hayes. This is Falcon 77 requesting immediate extraction from your position. Ada, 15 minutes. Hayes grabbed his radio. Falcon 77, this is Overwatch Team 7. We're not scheduled for extraction until 14:30 hours. Negative, Overwatch. Mission parameters have changed. Prepare for immediate pickup. Martinez checked his watch. 12:03 hours. Their extraction was supposed to be more than 2 hours away. But after what they'd just witnessed, normal protocols seemed irrelevant. Pack it up, Martinez ordered. Something tells me we're not going to get answers by staying here. As they broke down their equipment, Martinez couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. Not the hostile observation of an enemy sniper, but something else, a presence that felt almost protective. The mystery shooter had demonstrated the ability to kill them at will, yet had chosen instead to eliminate their target and disappear. The sound of rotor blades echoed off the valley walls exactly 15 minutes later. But as the helicopter crested the ridge, Martinez noticed something wrong. The aircraft was a UH-60 Black Hawk standard military transport, but the pilot was wearing a flight helmet that obscured their features completely. That's not our usual extraction crew, Hayes observed. Shouldering his pack, the helicopter settled onto a flat section of the ridge with practiced precision. The pilot's movements were fluid, professional, but something about the landing felt different, too smooth, too controlled, as if the aircraft was an extension of the pilot's nervous system. As they approached the helicopter, Martinez noticed the pilot's hands on the controls. Small, precise, with calluses in exactly the right places for someone who spent significant time behind a rifle scope. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Hayes, he whispered. But his spotter was already climbing into the passenger compartment. The pilot turned slightly, and Martinez caught a glimpse of eyes behind the helmet's visor, pale green, intelligent, and utterly calm. The same eyes that had been watching them through a scope for the past 4 hours. "Gentlemen," the pilot said, her voice carrying clearly through the helicopter's intercom system. "Welcome aboard." It was the same voice that had been taunting them over the radio, but now it carried a note of professional courtesy that was somehow more unsettling than her earlier psychological warfare. Martinez climbed into the passenger seat, his mind racing. The woman flying their extraction helicopter was the same person who had just made an impossible shot from nearly 2 kilometers away. The implications were staggering, not just her shooting ability, but the level of planning and coordination required to orchestrate their pickup. "Who are you?" Martinez asked as the helicopter lifted off. "Someone who's been cleaning up messes for longer than you believe," she replied, banking the aircraft toward the south. "Your government has a tendency to underestimate threats until they become catastrophic. I prefer a more proactive approach." Hayes was studying his tablet, cross-referencing their flight path with known military installations. "We're not heading toward any official landing zones." "Correct. Your official extraction will arrive in approximately 27 minutes. They'll find evidence of your successful mission and assume you've already been picked up by a different unit. Military bureaucracy has its advantages." Martinez watched the landscape scroll past below them, his mind struggling to process the day's events. "The shot you made, it's impossible. No human being can account for that many variables simultaneously." The pilot's helmet turned slightly toward him. "Who said I was entirely human?" Before Martinez could respond, she reached into a cargo pocket and produced a small package wrapped in military-grade canvas. "A gift, Sergeant. Consider it professional courtesy." Martinez unwrapped the package to reveal a rifle scope, not just any scope, but a Schmidt & Bender PM2 ultra-short, worth more than his annual salary. The optics were pristine, the mounting hardware precision-machined, and the serial numbers had been carefully removed. "Compliments of the Queen," the pilot said. And Martinez noticed she was wearing a small pin on her flight suit, a playing card, the Queen of Spades. "The Queen?" Hayes asked. "A designation, not a title. I've been the Queen of Spades for, well, longer than either of you have been alive." The helicopter began its descent toward what appeared to be an abandoned airstrip carved into a mountain plateau. No buildings, no personnel, just a flat stretch of concrete that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. "This is where you get off," the pilot announced. "Your official extraction will find you here in 43 minutes. The story is simple. You completed your mission, called for emergency pickup due to equipment failure, and were extracted by a passing medical evacuation flight." As the helicopter touched down, Martinez realized he might never get another chance for answers. Why help us? Why eliminate Nazir herself? The pilot shut down the engines and turned to face him fully. For the first time, he could see her face clearly ageless in the way that suggested either exceptional genetics or something more unsettling. Her eyes held depths that spoke of experiences spanning decades, maybe longer, because Sergeant Martinez, there are threats in this world that your government doesn't know about, can't know about, and wouldn't believe if they did. Al Nazir was building more than dirty bombs. He was building weapons that could unravel reality itself. Your mission was never about stopping a terrorist. It was about preventing an apocalypse. She handed him a business card, plain white, no text, just a phone number embossed in silver ink. When you encounter something that doesn't make sense, something that shouldn't exist, call that number. But understand this, once you cross that line, there's no going back to your normal world. Martinez and Hayes climbed out of the helicopter, their equipment bags landing beside them with soft thuds. As they stepped clear of the rotor wash, the pilot's voice carried one final message through the intercom. "Oh, and Sergeant, practice your long-range shooting. You're going to need it." The helicopter lifted off, banking sharply toward the north before disappearing behind a mountain peak. Martinez stood holding the business card, watching the empty sky, and wondering if he'd just been recruited for something far beyond his understanding. Hayes checked his watch. 42 minutes until official extraction. Martinez pocketed the card and shouldered his rifle. Plenty of time to come up with a believable story. But as they waited in the mountain silence, both men knew their war had just taken a turn towards something far stranger and more dangerous than anything they'd trained for.